think through various means of the healing that I've done, there have been points in time where I was very emotional and sad for my little younger self, my sweet, sweet younger self who really wanted to be seen. She really wanted to be loved. She wanted everyone to have peace. She wanted, overall, what I wanted was the healing for my mom. And that is something that I've been really working on, this past year or so, is to let go of my expectation of healing for others and focus more on the healing for myself. Because again, that expectation is essentially a control mechanism that my brain has rewired and changed in a different way, where it seems like it's out of compassion and love, which it is in a way, but it's also in a way that I'm trying to control other people by focusing so much on their healing. So you really have to decide, within this letting go and within the evaluation of their past and the way that they grew up, how you're going to show up in that relationship. So letting go, finding compassion for their path, and then you can eventually, decide how you want to show up in this relationship that you have together. And this is something that I've had to do and something that's been really helpful for me after releasing all the expectations is to show up, decide how I'm going to show up in our relationship. And I've always said this, and I never really understood what I was doing until I got older and understood the actual implications and context around it. But I used to say, when people would talk about their relationship, I was like, I have to treat my mom like she's a stranger. I treat her like she's a stranger, and it's been so helpful for me. I treat her like she's a stranger. And it seems cold and it seems odd, but by, in my head, contextualizing her as essentially a stranger, I could show up in our relationship as the version of myself that exists here today, and not as the version of myself that is the wounded, traumatic child that existed previously. And it really allowed me to work on my boundaries. It allowed me to respect her more and have more compassion, because Krista Williams right here you are today, is someone that's done a lot of work, someone that's done a lot of therapy, someone that's done a lot of self-reflection. My life is literally self-reflection and a personal development work. And so taking all that knowledge and information into the relationship with my mom is one of the hardest things to do. Ram Dass always says, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family, which is the greatest quote of all time, because you could have all these tools, all these principles, all these things that you practice and live by, and then you spend a week with your family and all things seem to go out the window. So for me, it was, I was much more able to bring all these tools and principles back to my relationship with my mom and practice them with her, together. When I was treating her like someone that wasn't my mom, when I could look at her not as the person that had wounded me or hurt me, or, that I had probably hurt as well, but really as this new person, as someone that was her own being, someone that was her own woman, someone that had gone through lots of trauma and hard times in her life outside of me, and I could respect her so much more for that. So when I showed up for holidays, when I got on the phone, if it was my mom, in quotes, and it was the younger version of me, the unhealed girl in me, it'd be like, oh, hey, okay, yeah. It would be like the attitude, it would be the shortness, it would be the expectations of not being met. It would be, this kind of belief that everything was just going to be bad anyways, and that I would never feel seen or never feel heard. And so by going into it, by actually treating her like a stranger, I could say genuinely, how are you? How's everything going? And she could respond to me much more openly and, in a more friendly way. And I could digest that information with the understanding that she is her own person now than she was when she was raising me. So that also speaks to boundaries. So when I'm treating someone, in quotes, like a stranger that's close to me, it's also meaning much more so that I have better boundaries than I did being a codependent child with in the relationship or situation that I was in. So I had to do a deep review of my boundaries when I was, sort of coming to the understanding of this relationship. I previously felt like I had to be a certain person for her. I felt like I had to, I was responsible for her healing when she was, going through hard times. I felt like it was completely my fault that I had to change for her to feel better, that I could make her happy, that it was something that I could take on the responsibility of doing. So I really had to review the set of boundaries I had with her at that time. So for me, it felt liberating. It felt freeing. It felt completely like something that I should have done a lot earlier. But I can imagine that for some of us, when we have a more enmeshed relationship with your mom, that it can feel difficult, that the boundaries can feel hard to make, that the boundaries can feel like the mother will push against them. And I have a really close friend here that lives in LA. And this year she's done a lot of work in therapy, and she recently had to create more strict boundaries with her mother because her mother had her when she was very young. So this has been hard for her because they were almost friends. And so it's been challenging to sort of establish boundaries with someone that you see as a friend. For me, I found the boundaries to be liberating, and I felt them to be freeing. So the experience of creating and setting boundaries can be different for you than it is the other person, but it really has to be the focus on your experience with the boundaries, and the boundaries being something that is helpful for you. And knowing that when you create a boundary that is helpful for you, it is also in turn helpful for them. I also learned to say no. I learned to say no when I previously would have said yes. So I used to say yes to multiple things, but what I would say yes to mostly that I can think about would be really going home for Christmas. I would go home every year and I would be miserable, and it would be a really challenging, odd time. There's something interesting that happens for me around the holidays because it's been, traumatic in the past. So I kind of get into this mode. And something else I used to feel really guilty and shameful about, that everyone was having these beautiful, loving experiences around the holidays, and I felt really sad that I wasn't. But I've created the boundary where I no longer go home for the holidays. So I do spend time with my family outside of it, but the holidays are not something that are going to happen for me. I'm not going to go home for the holidays. So I learned to say no when I previously would have said yes and regretted it. And, as the beautiful Brené Brown says, you have to ask yourself what's okay with me and what's now okay with me. So what's okay with me in high school, what's okay with me in college is very different than what's okay with me right now, and the boundaries that I have now, and, the ways in which that I navigate our relationship now. And you always have to remember that you are allowed to set boundaries, and you are allowed to express your needs. You are allowed to set boundaries, and you are allowed to express your needs. And the boundaries came easy for me, but the expression of my needs did not. And that is something that I've much more so learned as I got older, to be very vocal about the expression of my needs. You are as important as your mother. You are as important as your mother. So your opinion and your feeling good does not have to be another martyr situation where we're going from mother being the martyr to you being the martyr, and you're able to really express what you need in that relationship and the boundaries that you have to have. We are all equal. Mother is equal. The daughter is equal. So you're allowed to express what you feel. Another thing that's, if I'm numbering these, letting go of the idea of your mother changing, and then I'm doing 2 boundaries. A third one that's been really helpful in the healing of this relationship, the mother wound, is sisterhood. So leaning into sisterhood has been incredibly healing. My beautiful mother friends and my beautiful friends who are not mothers now has been incredibly, profoundly transformational. I realized how much I did not trust women until I was able and in relationships with women where I felt like I could actually truthfully work on that wound and work on and talk to and speak with that distrust, because I was finally able to be in community with women that saw me, that loved me, that respected me, that were there for me. And I allowed that experience of beautiful female friendships to heal so much of that feminine, that divine feminine wound that I held. I mean, even thinking about, my relationship with Lindsey, our beautiful relationship, and how the past years together has been incredibly healing for me in so many ways, but in one of the ways being healing that trust with women. I've had so many deep, beautiful female friendships. I mean, I have incredible friends, but there was a part of me that wasn't always being vulnerable, that always felt like I had to show up with the answers. I had to be perfect. I had to, I couldn't just let my guard down. I couldn't be vulnerable. We could never fight. And I felt like everyone would either abandon me or they would, betray me, or all of these other issues related to trust. So through, the evolution of Lindsey and I, we've had this deep, intimate soul connection that has really allowed me to trust women again, to be like, oh, when times get hard, you're not going to take love away from me. When times get hard, you're going to love me just as it was before. And you're going to seek to always see the good in me. And you're going to seek to always be there for me. And you're actually going to hear me. And all of these other beautiful things that female relationships really do to heal us. Women are seers. We are the healers of the world. And in sisterhood, we can truly heal.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Morning Microdose by Almost 30.
We hope you enjoyed waking up.
As always, we encourage you to take what resonates and leave the rest. If you enjoyed this trip, tune into the full episode on the Almost 30 podcast. All episode information can be found in the show notes.
Make sure to subscribe, and if this becomes a part of your morning routine, be sure to share it with a friend. We have new inspiring doses Monday through Friday. Follow us on Instagram at Morning Microdose, and follow Almost 30 at Almost 30 Podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the vortex.